Gentlemen, welcome back to the Front Row Dads podcast. I'm your host, John Broman, and today I'm joined by Matt Sharp. We're talking KidStrong and anything else that pops up during this conversation. I want to give a thanks to Andrew Kuhn for connecting us. And Matt, it's great to have you on the show, man. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I love what you're up to. Let's start with what the heck is KidStrong?
All right. So to kind of talk about KidStrong, we always go back to like the beginning. We built it for our daughter, Ella, when she was about 18 months old. And the kind of genesis for the idea was my wife was a kindergarten PE teacher for 7 years. She had seen kids, she had seen diminished capacity with kids over her tenure. So definitely as PE teacher, you saw a lot of physical literacy issues. But I think the thing that scared her the most with kindergarten was there was a lot of social and emotional deficiencies with kids she was seeing. So can't get dropped off without, meltdown, can't pay attention, high anxiety, all those things. My background at the time was in tech, law enforcement, and startup, there's a lot going on there. But she basically came to me and said, hey, we got to get Ella into something because I don't want her to end up like these kids I'm seeing in kindergarten. And in our town, there was a gymboree and a little gym. And we've been to both of those. Not heavily attended by dads, not like overly modern. It was a little more like patty cake kind of place. And we were for Ella especially, there were two main goals for Ella. We wanted her to be strong and confident. And we think if we could build some of that stuff in, like a lot of the other stuff, will kind of take care of itself. Especially my background in law enforcement. I kind of wanted Ella to have this aura. If you touch her, she will destroy you kind of thing. So, there was not a place like that. And that was kind of the genesis for we started training her at home. We ripped everything out of our dining room and basically made like baby Fight Club mixed with Cirque du Soleil in our dining room and just started training her at home. And then she would just go to playgrounds and just destroy the playground. Even at like 3. And a lot of parents would ask, like, where do you take her? She's gymnastics. She's very confident. She climbs really well. And KidStrong is my 5th startup. And, if you are an entrepreneur or if you've been in business, there's just like things that are like you listen for. And if you have a lot of parents asking like the same questions, you see like there's a problem here, there's a need. There was just bells and whistles going off. So started as a pop-up class. Me and a co-founder owned a CrossFit in Lexington. We had a space next door that wasn't really used. So we started a pop-up class next door, started off with 25 kids. And just to skip like years of learning and education, grew from 25 to maybe like 150, had a group out of Dallas, wanted us to come down and open one in Dallas, Texas, because it's just fast growth area. And I would say the one thing that we learned really early on was that target audience was parents, not necessarily kids. You have to win the family to win the war. And for us, very heavily, we focused on dads as part of like target persona, because if you can get the dad to come, the mom already wants to come. And we saw that a lot. So a lot of early branding, colors, we look very industrial. We look more like Nike than we do like a Disney ride. So those things were early. Another thing that we really focused on early that led to success was its science-based program. So really early on, we got a team of child developmental experts to build the curriculum. And our goal was to have kids 2 to 3 years ahead of where they should be developmentally. Because if you can have a kid enter kindergarten and they're operating on a 1st or 2nd grade level, just kindergarten's a lot more fun. If you're good at basketball and your friends want to play pickup game, you always say yes. And that's kind of how life is for kids too. And then we were really focused on like high quality coaching because we saw just a big need in the children's space for like people that could work with parents and coach parents on what to do with your kids and also work with kids. So that led to a lot of like growth and say referrals early on. We picked up the family, moved to Texas on a whim and a prayer to like launch it. As of last week, 55 locations, about 30,000 kids in the program. We should have a really big year next year. And I've skipped a ton of like stuff in there, but it was I think it was a good idea at a good time. But I think our key to success was we got a lot of really good people involved early on, like some good co-founders, just some really smart people. The company's very low ego, high focus on product. So whatever works, for the kids and the families, that's kind of how we adjust the product roadmap. So to sum all that up, it's a science-based training program for kids. The goal is to have them 2 years ahead of where they should be. So if they're behind, we want to bring them up. If they're ahead, we want to keep that going. If they're in the middle, we want to accelerate their development. It's built by experts. It's really focused on parent coaching and working with the parents to understand the science of child development. Weekly classes come once a week. It's a group of coaches that works you through a curriculum, monthly progressions. The kids rank up kind of like martial arts over time. And there's this like game of KidStrong. And we started franchising it a few years ago. So we own all the ones in Dallas, and everything outside of Dallas we franchise.
And what's the age? Where do they start? Youngest and oldest?
They start at walking. So as soon as a kid can walk, we get them in there. And then our cap is 11 now.
Okay.
So we used to cap at 8, but we had a lot of kids that wanted to stay, and they were aging out. So then we added a new program called KSX. That's for 9 to 11. It's a little bit more disciplined than the younger kids.
Sure.
And we have 3 sections of the program. So there's KidStrong Prep, KidStrong, and then KSX. And then all those curriculums are built for basically like the way the kid's brain works at that age, because kids learn very differently as they progress. So those are kind of like our buckets for how we get the kids into the program.
That's cool. And let's go back in time a little bit also. Actually, first, let me congratulate you, man. That's no easy task to get to 55 locations, 30,000 kids, and your father, right? So
yes,
you're also doing the dad thing along the way. And I think that's most of men, they want to know, how do you do all this? Right. Mm-hmm. So I want to cover that too. I want to get to the, how do you do it all personally as a business owner and as a dad and all the other priorities. But before we get there, let's go back in time a little bit. Tell me about your life as a kid, developmentally, like your involvement in sports or mentors in your life, programs you were involved with or lack thereof.
Yeah. Played sports, backyard sports from probably 7 on. Played high school football, was part of a team that won a national or state championship. Played college football. Got a master's degree in criminal justice when I was in school. Ended up going into law enforcement. Taught college for a little while I was in law enforcement. Had some patents on some products I was spinning up.
Really? Like what?
Opened a CrossFit along the way. Cuff key, like a cuff key. So things that don't work well really bug me.
Yeah.
So like when I was in the police academy, there was just like some issues with some of the equipment. I was like, well, if we could do it this way, it'd be a little bit safer, faster, but I had a great childhood, super hardworking parents. Both my dad quit his job 16 years to go back to school. He worked in an aluminum factory, got his master's degree, and then they switched places, and my mom quit and went back to school. So got to see that, got to travel a little bit when I was a kid, following them to places when they were going to school. But, great childhood, very heavy into sports. I would say on mentors, I never really had a lot of mentors growing up. So a lot of my mentors were either books or quotes. I remember in high school, my locker was just filled with quotes. Because a lot of people from where I'm from end up staying in that area. So there wasn't a lot of people that escaped that area, and it's a tough environment, where we grew up. There's a high unemployment rate, a lot of poverty in that area. The best people in the world, but just at the Southeast Kentucky, Appalachian region, it's just it's a tough area, and that's where I grew up.
What was your relationship like with your dad?
Great relationship with my dad. He played sports growing up. I'm sure he's traditional dad from that era, hard work, tough. Probably hugged more than his dad hugged him. I'd say it gets a little better. It gets a little better every generation.
Yeah, for sure.
But my grandparents went through the Great Depression, and I'm sure that kind of shaped the way they parented. And then my parents kind of grew up in that next generation after that. So I think a lot of that stuff like got trickled down to, safe choices, save money, work hard, find a job, stick with it, things like that.
Totally.
Those values.
What do you think was modeled for you as a dad that you're like, hey, this is a value that I received from my father, and this is how I'm now teaching it in my life? I could guess based on what you just shared, but.
Yeah, I can remember really clearly growing up, like times, and it's kind of crazy how you remember those things, but like even at like 5 to 7, just being in the backyard, like working on stuff. Yeah. Like, I think if you went back like 100 years, there was probably a lot more apprenticeship that families would do internally. Like if you grew up on a farm, you would also go to work with your family on the farm. And there's just a lot of life lessons that are learned with, like, do we do a good job every time? Or sometimes, do we finish our work before we go into the house? Everything has your signature on it. The value of hard work, working together. And I think what has happened just over time, families are just more separated. If you think about like during the day. So there's just this separation, especially as you grow up from your family, and then you kind of like re-huddle at the end of the night, but you miss out on a lot of this like apprenticeship, from your families. And I just remember a lot of that stuff when I was young, like, let's say mechanic, like working on stuff, or practicing drills for sports. And it's just kind of crazy how that stuff anchors, like that time, that just gets anchored there. And Ryan Holiday talks about it. Even like junk time is like really valuable, just like hanging out time. And, it's funny, like how you remember those things when you were growing up.
When you think about your family now,
that time he spent with me, I try to like do that with my kids. Cause I know even though they're young, like it definitely has an impact.
How old are your kids now?
So I have a 13-year-old from previous marriage that's in Ohio. And then me and my wife have, Lord, I'm gonna get this right, 8, 6, 5, and almost 2.
Wow. Man, hands are full.
It's very, very busy.
What do you, This is good. We're heading in the right direction here.
Yeah. It's not normal. Yeah.
No. Well, hey, speaking of normal, what is, when you look at your family, where might you say, look, this is where we're like everybody else? Right? Like we have the same situation everybody else has. And where are you unique or different? You're like, I think our family is very unique in this way.
I would say we're like everyone else in that, I don't even know that we can get out of the neighborhood without a brawl in the car and screaming. We'll shift seats sometimes with the kids 3 or 4 times within a couple of square miles, They're just, we have very like confident kids.
Yeah.
So it's just like if you put like 3 or 4 alphas in a car together, like they might kill each other over like a piece of trash.
Yeah.
Because that piece of trash is, a piece of gold for this like play they're doing.
Yeah. And
they'll like literally fight each other over junk. I think parenting is just really, really hard. And one of the reasons we created KidStrong is because I think a lot of parents love their kids. No one really knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And it was really for us to come alongside them and say, like, here's like experts. And here's other parents that are going through the same stuff that you're going through at this age. Because if you have a 4-year-old boy and you're normal, you kind of think something's wrong with him because they're wild animals, and you have to get around another parent of a boy. It's like, no, my kid's been to the ER 4 times. Like, you see my kid up there in the rafters, like that's just, he's eating his socks and he's in the rafters. Like, that's just like how they are, and you have to get around other parents, be like, oh shit, like okay. Like my kid's like that. I like mad at him all the time, but that's kind of like how they are.
Yeah.
So I'd say we're very, similar like that. Like we definitely don't have it figured out. I'd say what we're unique is we've been able to kind of create this like life built around work-life blend. Because at my last job, and I've had great jobs, but there was like dad went off to work, kids go off somewhere, and then you regroup. But now with KidStrong, we can take our kids to work with us. It's a very family kind of focused company. Almost everybody has kids. I think we're approaching 6 married couples that work for us, or they both work for us, which is pretty unique and pretty cool. Because it's just a good sign. Like if somebody gets into a company and they're like, I'm gonna bring my husband with me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of that. But I have meetings all the time at the location while my kids are going through class.
Yeah.
So I'm at work, but my kids are there. I'm with my kids. And I think one of the greatest gifts you can give a child is to like model either like, you want to model leadership for them, but to model that, they have to see you. So a great example for that is like my daughter has seen her mom be a boss since she was basically 2. So now my daughter just assumes when she gets older, she's the boss. She's like, no, that's just what you do. Like when you grow up, like you're in charge of stuff, like you own something, you're in charge of stuff, you have people that work for you. So she's just on a different level than other kids that just haven't seen that like modeled for them. So she's like strong leadership, very confident. Somebody asks for a volunteer to raise your hand, like she's probably going to get in trouble, run into the front of the room because she's just like seen that. So I think that's pretty unique with KidStrong that we get to model that stuff for our kids a lot. And we also get to model like small business owner for them. So when we go in there, they can't tear the place down. This is a business, these are our customers. They help clean, they get stuff, when we have a grand opening, they help hand stuff out. And they're just starting to like understand that like, oh, okay, if I do something for somebody, that's a service. And if you do enough of that, people will pay you, and I can like get paid to help people. Like I can create something or solve problems and, people will pay me. And, I did not get a lot of that model growing up, and I don't know where that gene came from. Because it was, I grew up in a very like, go to college, get a job. And it's no fault of like parents, but I think if you went through like what, parents and grandparents went through, like just having a paycheck and being able to like feed your family was the goal.
Wait, hold on. Was that modeled for you though as an adult? Did you meet somebody in like the police academy? Did you find a mentor? Did you watch a movie?
I was just always like strange. I think all entrepreneurs are just a little off.
March to the beat of your own drum, man.
I think they are. And I talk a lot about like, I think good entrepreneurs are like strategic rebels.
Yeah.
Because there's like rebels who are just rebels. Like I hate
just to go against something.
Yeah.
Just to rebel against
stuff.
Right.
I'm just like down with the man. You're like, well, who is the man again? I don't know, but down with them, And I think entrepreneurs, like, I think if they're smart, they're more strategic rebels, and they're just like, hey, this system, why is it built like this? And do I have to like have the same job forever? Like, why can't I just create my own rules for like, if I see like a need, I go do something and then I help people out and then they pay me for that. Because that's really like off the path of like what I would say like what normal people do. And I think a lot of really good entrepreneurs, they go all in on their business, but they're not going to die if it fails. And I think people think if they go for this thing and it fails, they're going to die. And if you really like reverse engineer that, they're not going to die. They'll just get another job. And I've had to walk a lot of like young entrepreneurs through that because they're like, I can't do this. Like, if I quit my job, I'm like, well, you don't have to quit your job, just do it on the side. Oh, okay. Because I thought I had to like quit my job, and like, no, like there's you have to be strategic about this. But I like that instinct that people have where they're like, what if, I don't have to do it. Steve Jobs has that great quote, like, these rules are made up by people no smarter than you. Like you can create whatever life you want.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from though, but I was always just off, like a little different.
How are you currently nurturing the strengths, the strengths that come from nature, that are God-given talents
Mhm.
within your children? How are you identifying them, nurturing them, and trying not to turn them into something that you think they should be? Then again, I'm
Yeah,
projecting a belief there, but it's like,
yeah.
yeah, you get where I'm going with that.
I think for us, and one of kind of the goals of KidStrong is like, let's build awesome humans and let the rest kind of work itself out.
Mhm.
And I think if you can, I think every parent's, and I would say most parents like, I want my kid to play like professional sports, or I want them to get an athletic or academic scholarship. At the end of the day, like if you really reverse engineer people that are happy, that's not necessarily the way to get there. And if you talk, because we talk to educators all the time, we're like, who are your most successful kids? And they're like the kids with the highest like social emotional scores in kindergarten. We're around this a lot, but like for parents, you just feel like, what does that mean? Like they can interact with other kids, they're kind, they can lead if they need to. Um, they can they are a good human. And at the end of the day, like if you can build like good humans, we think a lot of this other stuff will work out. So what we do is we'll put them in things where they have gifts, but we'll also push them to do things that they don't have gifts in, because that's kind of how life is. Like our daughter is very, very like, let's say naturally talented, but that only gets you like so far. And then you get around other kids that are talented but work harder, and then you get your butt kicked. And it's, oh, because you've been able to get by on talent for so long, that's not how life is. Because you're always like, when you go from like the best player in high school and you go to college, well, now you're a scrub. Like those things just don't keep going forever. So a lot of I think a lot of it's just like the process. Like I'm more concerned with the process than the outcome with the
Mhm.
kids. So like if we play a sport, um, we're going to take it serious. We're going to be coachable. We're going to work really hard. If there's something we're bad at, we're going to work on it. And if we win, great. But like we're really focused on like that process of like, how are we better as a person at the end of the season than the beginning of the season? Not necessarily how do we win, but there are a lot of lessons in winning.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
And on the note of progress, when you look at your last year of your life, Matt, where would you say that you've grown the most? What have you learned this year that you didn't previously know or know as well?
I'd say like the last year, probably like especially like the last 6 or 9 months, stoicism. I've like really dug back into that. Ryan Holiday, who lives in Austin or outside Austin, has written a ton of books on this. I'm a huge fan of his. Um, and I think great leaders are usually very stoic. And they're just not like, we talk about this thing in our company, like, are you a buoy or are you an anchor? Because like the buoy is just like up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And the anchor is like something that holds like the team together and holds the team steady. And I think I just learned a lot over the last year. Like as our company grows, we have this thing where we say like every 6 months, it's a different company. So like what got you here won't get you to the next level, because you have twice as many direct reports, you have twice as many people in the system, whatever it is. But like, again, if you were the best player in high school and you go to college, like that stuff doesn't work anymore. And the company has like these sandboxes. As a company grows, they're just in different sandboxes. And I've had to learn a lot about, how do I help lead? How does my leadership adjust as we grow into different sandboxes? And, one of the things, stoicism has helped me a lot, because there's always this like a thing happens and then there's a reaction. And the distance between those two means a lot. And I think if you look at like that stoicism, there's just like, let's create distance between like the thing happens and my reaction. And I think as you just mature as a leader, you create more and more distance. And
Mhm.
then that reaction is just, it's more accurate, And I think as you also, people have done this way more than me, but as a company grows, you get more and more like executives involved. So it's very different coaching, let's say like a little league basketball team and coaching the Lakers. It's just very different. So with a younger team, you're probably more like fundamentals. But when you get like the company grows, you have more executives, you have more like highly talented players. And then the goal is to get them to like work together. But you have to coach them all very, very differently, you know. And so I look at things like, how coaches work with like Kobe and Shaq, who are very different. But if you want to win a championship, they can't hate each other. You need both of them. They need to work together. And you might have 10 guys on a team. They're all highly talented. There's a lot of egos there. It's just different than coaching them in like a little league team.
Yeah. For sure. How do you get it all done, Matt? Lots on your plate. How are you? Let's talk calendar. And also like specifically, like what are your strategies on your calendar, boundaries, where are your yeses and nos? How do you stay in shape, focus on the finances, pay the bills, have a healthy, relationship with your spouse, right? Spend time with your kids. It goes on and on and on.
I'd love to figure all those things out. I'd say I can tell you things that work and things that don't work. I do not think I get it all done or have it figured out. If I don't work out before 7:00 in the morning, there is no workout. So if I'm going to sleep good that night, it's probably because I had like a workout the day before that was good. And I think there's a lot of science behind like getting up early and getting things moving, and just getting that stuff out of the way. And then I'll spend probably an hour. Well, now the kids get up and work out with me. So we get like some time together before school. And then we'll get kids to school. There's probably a block of 30, 45 minutes of work in there, let's say like online work, because we have a gap between like a 2-year-old and kids that are in elementary school. And then work probably through 4 or 5, heavy family time till probably 8, another block of work from probably like 8 to 9, and then time with the wife from then till bed. And then that happens almost every day, but they are very, very full days in there. I think as you get more busy, you don't do more stuff. You just get more strategic with your time. You hire really good people that are hopefully smarter than you to do some of these things. I've had to learn to be very protective with like an hour of time. And it's either like, it needs to be like a strategic hour that pushes the company forward, or I'm growing somebody that can, accelerate things faster than I can do them. But if I look back on my week and I have a lot of like doing stuff that is stuff somebody else should be doing, I don't think that week was a win. And I try to have like 3 to 5 key things that I can get done in a day. And if I get those done, I feel like that day was a win. If I'm really, really busy and I don't get those done, I feel like that day was a loss.
Yep.
Yeah. That's very high level though.
Talk to me.
Look at it.
Talk to me about the future a little bit. What's calling you forward? What are you excited about? How do you envision the next 6 to 12 months changing for you? What are your targets for evolution?
I think I have to grow a lot as a leader to help the company be what it can be. I think a lot of companies, there's just a lot of opportunity. Ideas are cheap, and it really comes down to like, can you build a good team and execute? Steve Jobs, like saying, I want my music on my phone. Like that was the easy part, or I want a car that drives itself and has a battery. Like those are very easy statements to say, but it's very hard to like actually pull those things off. So I think for me, I have to grow a lot as a leader to like help the company propel forward with that. I have to attract really, really strong talent to the team. I mean, a lot of success for us is like attract and retain talent, because the idea is like, I think it's a good idea and it's good timing. A lot of our success is going to be like attract and retain talent. And then I want to make sure we protect our family time as we grow. I don't think the goal would be to work more hours. It should be to work better hours, or work the same amount of hours and make them, 4x valuable than they were the year before.
Yeah.
Because there's only so many hours. And the last thing I want to be is like a really good individual performer. I do not want to be a good individual performer. I want like a builder of teams, and somebody that like focuses on culture at the company and pushes things forward. But I think the company has a lot of opportunity over the next year or next 5 to 7 years.
And I don't want to miss this opportunity to say to the guys who are listening to this, because there are quite a few people out there who would be in a position to become a franchise partner in your business. How would they go about exploring that opportunity if they wanted to be an investor, be an owner, be part of your vision and mission here?
Yeah. So KidStrong.com, there is a own a location on there, a button. And there's very few layers between that and me, especially if it's somebody that's a referral, experienced business owner. We're very strong on referrals. One of the things we've had going in our favor is we've never done outbound marketing for franchising to date, which is kind of crazy at this, considering how many licenses we've sold. But we're just we're very mission driven. And I think if you can create a business that does good, you love working on it, and it provides financially for you, you're not really working, or you don't feel like you're working, and it's something that your family can be involved in. That is why we've been able to attract so many people, like high caliber people, into the franchise. Because we are outside of our weight class with our people all the time. There's always people entering the system that are, many levels ahead of us. Because they're just a big part of our success is like strong culture, because you just attract great people, want to work on big problems.
Matt, yeah, I know I'm paying attention to the clock here. You've got an appointment coming up shortly. Let's wrap with this. If you had, and I could have prepped you on this one, but yeah, shoot from the hip.
Yeah.
Three principles for parenting that you believe are important for you and your family. 3 principles for parenting.
I would say one of them is love them no matter what. They're not you. They're not going to be like you, and they're all different. And a lot of parenting, I think, is just meeting them where they're at and helping them succeed in whatever their natural gifts are, might not be your gifts. And just like loving them the way they are. I think another one is being highly aligned with your spouse on how you raise the children. You can't, I would struggle if me and Megan were not similar, if we were not aligned on, let's say, like work ethic or discipline, or, should they play a sport or not play a sport? How do we look at academic performance? I think if you're not aligned as like father and mother, it's very confusing for the kids. And it's like having 2 bosses that are completely different, telling you completely different things. And there's no way for a kid to win in that scenario. So I think one of the things that has helped us is we were very aligned kind of before we had kids. And then as we have the kids, we try to stay like hyper aligned on, let's say, like the culture of the family. And then I think another one would be like invest in the time, invest in them. And like Ryan Holiday talks about like junk time. And I think business owners, we sometimes we think like, if I'm going to spend an hour with them, they have to be like training.
Yeah, right.
Well, they don't. Like some of the most important times, like we watched a movie with our daughter last night, and it's a movie that I would not watch without my daughter. It was Dumbledore or something. But like she was so excited just to sit on the couch and watch this movie together and like hold on to my arm and like lay her head on me. And I think sometimes when you're an adult, you could be like, this is like a waste of 2 hours. I don't really like the movie, or I could be doing emails or something like this. But when she's 18 and she's making decisions, it's going to be like based on how she felt at like 8, and when she picks a mate, it's going to be based on like how her father treated her, how the father, how the mother and father get along, how they interact with each other. But I think it's just okay to have, and he talks about his junk time, and he's saying that to like be funny, because it's not junk time. Like, it's just like, you just got to spend time together, period. And there doesn't always have to be an agenda, doesn't always have to be training for like some Olympic sport. It's just like hang out with them, because I think they just need more of that than we realize.
So I love those principles, man. Thank you. You handled it like a pro with no prep.
No prep.
No prep, man.
I'm trying to think, what are we working on right now?
I had I had an experience probably 3 nights ago where I have a 13-year-old and an 8-year-old, and my 13-year-old is going to Nepal on Friday for 3 weeks with his school to go hike in the Himalayas, which is just wild.
That's amazing.
Yeah, totally incredible. At the same time, my wife and my youngest are going to go to Russia for 3 weeks to see family. And, I'm sitting there on the couch, and it's late, and Tiger's been packing for his trip. So it's probably approaching 10 o'clock. And now, for years in his life, when he would go to bed, I would always go in and either like tickle his back or rub his feet or sit with him or snuggle with him, or what. I've done it with both boys their whole lives. And I remember there was at one point when I was just feeling a lot of pressure with work, and his bedtime was getting later and later and later. And then I had to have a conversation with him about like, hey, you're at this age now where I might not do this every night. And he came out to see me at 10 o'clock at night, again, a couple nights ago. And he's like, hey, I'm going to go to bed. And I said, all right, buddy, I love you. Go to, get some rest. And he goes, hey, would you come in and rub my feet? And I looked at him and I went, buddy, it's too late. I can't, I'm sitting on the couch. I've got my computer open. I'm just trying to get into like wrapping up
messing up your routine. It's messing up your stuff.
Messing up my stuff. It's messing up my flow. Like, I'm not going to get to bed on time. And I sat there for probably a good 3 minutes and wrestled internally about this.
I know this battle.
Dude, and here's what happened. I got up and I walked into his room and I sat down, and with so much joy in my heart, I like rubbed his feet, because I thought to myself, here's what got me off the couch, Matt. I literally sat there and I went, I'm not sure how many more times in his life he is going to ask me to go into his room to rub his feet. Like, this might be coming to an end. And one day I might give any money in the world to go back and sit in his room and say goodnight and rub his feet. Fuck these emails. Like, right?
Oh yeah.
No, I don't think that's always the solution. I don't think that's a one size fits all. In every scenario, you should say no to work. You should say no to your health. You should say no to sleep. You should just go do whatever your kids want you to do, because God, you might not have that one day. I don't think that's a principle that applies everywhere at all times. But in this moment, in this scenario, that became a very clear and conscious decision for me to do that. And I'm so glad that I did, because I know that when I fast forward, I will feel more proud that I walked into his room and did that than I will feeling like I got those couple emails sent off.
Yeah. Those traditions too, I think, are key. I think parents sometimes underestimate like just family traditions or like nightly traditions, and kids really anchor on these things.
Yeah.
And it's just, and those things can adjust over time. But I think just if this is why I always like peel back to like stoicism. Basically, like there's a coin that a lot of people carry. It says memento mori, like remember death.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and if somebody passed away the next day,
yes,
and you had that like hanging over you, and it's just very precious. I think the time with the kids is just very precious, and I've even seen like charts where they'll basically say like mark off days until they're 18.
Oh yeah.
And like those things kind of scare the crap out of you when you see them.
They should, man.
But that's real, and I think that perspective is real. And I think just every now and then we just have to like get out of the clouds a little bit.
Yes.
And just kind of get in the dirt with the kids.
Yes.
And if you pull them out of school to go do something that's awesome, who cares? If they jump in the puddles, who cares? If they stay up late one night, like who cares? Like these are good memories with the kids,
No doubt.
Yeah.
Matt, we covered a lot of ground today, man. I'm glad that we got into your life story a bit. We talked about KidStrong. We talked about your principles for parenting, a little bit about the future. I think we had a little bit of range in our conversation, and I appreciate your authenticity. Several times when you were talking, I was like, "Oh, Matt's great at getting his ideas across in a concise way." And I think that you embody a lot of those principles of stoicism. I felt that in your energy, and I really appreciate.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, man. I can tell. I can tell it shows. So appreciate you. And I look forward to building our friendship in the years ahead and following the success of your program. And I hope guys will take an interest. I think some guys already have reached out about opening franchise, locations with you. So that's awesome, man. I thank you for your time.
Appreciate it, John.